What's up, golfers? It's Brandon from New Nine Golf, and today I'm looking at the brand new player irons from Cobra. For me personally, the player irons from Cobra haven't always piqued my interest, but these things look so good this year, I can't wait to hit them. I'm gonna show you guys how these perform, so let's get into it. So the three irons we're gonna take a look at, the first is the King Tour. This is the iron Ricky Fowler just put in his bag. If you remember last year, Ricky Fowler was playing his own line of the MBs. They were probably one of the hardest irons to hit, and Ricky Fowler has had really good success so far putting the King Tours in his bag. Cobra also has the King CB. This is their cavity back iron, and the third iron is their full blade, which is their MB. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit all of these. For me, a player's iron, I need good workability and distance consistency. I'll take these three irons onto the range, I'm gonna hit them, then I'm gonna move on to a par 3 and see how these perform hitting into a green. Okay, the first iron we're gonna look at is the King Tour. So this is the iron that Ricky Fowler switched. So why would Ricky Fowler switch from his own custom MB to this King Tour? What Ricky said is the difference in his mishits is way better with this King Tour. So it's still a forged iron. It should still have player characteristics. If you follow Ricky Fowler, you would have seen that his last two tournaments, he's played really well, and that was with these King Tour irons. So looking at this club at address, I think it looks right on the money. I don't find that the top line is too thick or too thin. I would say it's right in the middle for a top line, and it's satin. For me personally, I don't love looking at chrome irons. I find that kind of distracts me, where this top line is, like I said, satin, and I do really like the look of it. A little mishit that should go to the right. So it's going where it felt like it did. So the first two swings, I would say they sound really good. And as I get into my session, I should be able to just tighten this up a bit. If any of you are new to the channel, my name's Brandon, and we've helped over 1 million golfers make informed decisions on golf products. I review everything from golf irons to drivers to electric push carts and everything in between. So if you're new here, feel free to smash subscribe so you can see our future reviews. That felt pure. There we go, there's the line. So the iron that I'm using, this is a 7 iron. The shaft that's in here is a stock option from Cobra. It is the KBS S taper. This one is 130 grams. So if you're looking at getting new Cobra irons, this is a shaft that would be included in your iron set. Okay, I don't want to bore you guys with the tech behind these clubs. There's so much information that you can find online that you can definitely read into these. For me as a consumer, I want the ball flight to be consistent. I want to be able to hold greens, and I want to be able to shot shape. When I was looking at the specs, these are 2 degrees stronger. So what I think of when a lot of manufacturers do this is they're jacking up the loft so I can just hit it further. So all of a sudden my 7 iron is going 200 yards where it used to go 180. There is a science behind that. They're trying to compensate to get a better ball flight, but all I care about is the data and the dispersion that I'm gonna get. So let's just keep hitting these. So I'm kind of a sound snob when it comes to irons, and these things sound actually really good. I love the sound of a good forged iron, and these are definitely living up to that category. They feel quite soft. I find even up and down from the toe, getting closer to the heel, that the sound isn't really changing. So I think overall the sound is actually pretty good in these King Tours. So to get all of this data, we're using a TrackMan, and the ball that I'm using is a Pro V1 RCT ball. Where I'm filming in Calgary, Alberta, we are at elevation, so if these 7 iron numbers look crazy to you and you golf at sea level, just take into account where we are filming. So that one was definitely a bit of a mishit. I felt like I opened the toe, like I felt like I caught it wide open. Oh, okay. And it still held the line. Let's take a look at all the data of this King Tour. Like I would say the majority of them had good shape. I had 1, 2, 3, really 3 get away from me. Yeah. So 7 out of 10 went on the direction that I was hoping for. Dispersion wise, so you can see how close kind of this grouping is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were grouped right within 5 yards of each other at the 200-yard line. But again, a couple misses, 1, 2, 3, 4. These were kind of those flares that I had, right? And then 1 flared, but it went right on that 200 line. Overall though, I think looking at my dispersion on the tracer, fairly consistent ball flight, right? Yeah. Like I've had sessions before where I'll have 1 way over here and 1 way over here. So I would say the majority of them are close to my line. And I would say it was fairly forgiving. So what I'm interested in is as I move down in forgiveness of clubs into the CB and the NB, if this is going to get even thicker. Yeah, so for you guys watching, something to consider is that I'm just starting with the stock option shaft. So potentially I could tighten this up, but I thought overall the S-taper was a decent shaft for me, but in a full fitting, I could potentially tighten that up. So what's cool about having this channel, New 9 Golf, is that I've been given access to a ton of the newest, latest, and greatest irons. I practically live here at Modern Golf filming golf review videos, but what really helps me is if you guys subscribe, I get access to even more products, and even those products that might not be a household name, but I know that you guys want reviews on them, so if you can, it helps me out if you smash subscribe. Okay, the next club I'm gonna hit is the Cobra CB. So this is their cavity back iron. So this one's right in between their full blade and then the King Tour, which was the Ricky club that we just hit. Looking at the CB and the King Tour side by side, they look very similar. To me, it doesn't look more like a blade from a dress. So from a visual standpoint, I find that these new Cobra player irons are a lot cleaner than maybe some of their irons in the past. They've kind of had some out there color combinations with kind of some black or some greens or maybe orange way in the past. I think that these are very timeless, and with them being satin irons, I think overall they are more minimal than maybe some of their previous irons. So I'd say visually this new players lineup from Cobra looks really good. Okay, the CB, we got the same shaft in it, so let's see what type of results I can get. So from a feel perspective, I would say that they feel very similar to that King Forged. I haven't missed one. So my perception is as I get down closer from the CB and into the MB, they should be harder to hit, or that's what I'm thinking. But I haven't had one like 40 yards shorter than my previous one. So I think if you're in the market for a player's iron, this still feels very similar as their most forgiving player's iron. I noticed it maybe just slightly with the mishits. That one felt maybe a groove or two low on the face. I would definitely say that the King Forge feels more forgiving, but I'm still getting really good numbers. So again, if that's my miss, a groove low, I turned it over so a draw should go further. Those are still pretty good numbers for a mishit. So last year's irons, those King irons, looked way different. They were all chrome, and for me personally, I hate looking at a chrome iron. I find that when I play in the sun, I'll get a lot of reflection off the chrome, so I love that this year's player irons have that satin finish, and they look more timeless. There's not a big king on the back of the cavity. These are very clean, and I way prefer the look of these new player irons. That felt good. Okay, so we just wrapped up with the CBs, and that session to me the club felt really good, but my dispersion I wasn't a huge fan of. So this here, the first white lines, this is the King Tour dispersion, and now I look at the CB and it's kind of all over the place. So I was kind of going left, I was kind of going right. So distance-wise, I'm still within probably that 20 yards from my best to my worst. But if I look at the King Tour, I would say the balls are just slightly closer. And that's kind of what I was expecting, that I was expecting the King Tour to be the most forgiving, having a better dispersion. And as we get into the CB and then the MB, which I'll hit next, in theory, should be the hardest to hit out of all of them. So I wasn't expecting my CB numbers to go up. So I would say that my data is confirming what I was thinking about the CBs, but they felt awesome. There might be some of you guys watching that you've played CBs your entire life, and that's what appeals to you. So I think that they felt really good. They looked very good, but for my game, based on the two that I've hit, I would be leaning towards those King Tours. All right, the last iron we're looking at is the King MB, the Muscleback, their blade. When I put this side by side, the CB, it doesn't again look overly smaller or more intimidating to look at from the top line. I find that this MB actually has probably one of the thicker top lines I've seen from most traditional blades. If you looked at last year's Ricky blade, it looks way thinner, like that's a butter knife. I don't think butter knife when I take a look at this. It actually almost looks similar to the King Tour. So to have a blade visually look like a more forgiving iron, that might be a good thing to build some confidence that you're not going to chunk it. So I think visually it looks good from a dress, and again, just not as intimidating as I would expect a blade to look. I'm anticipating this might be my worst session based on how I went from the King Tour then into the CB. Maybe it'll surprise me, but I'll apologize in advance if my dispersion looks out of whack. Whew. Felt good off the hop. So that felt a groove low, but like my hands aren't vibrating. I've hit blades in the past that I've mishit, and you know, you wake up the next day and your hands are still sore from that mishit. So I would say my first 2 hits out of the gate are relatively forgiving. So that one didn't feel as pure as my first couple hits, but I'm still getting relatively good distance. Still carrying 190, total 202. So for that to be a mishit with a blade, that these might be a little bit more forgiving than I was anticipating. Okay, so it's true what they say about blades. If you catch it on the screws in the center of the club face, it goes where you're expecting. But if you mishit, it looks like this. So I had 2 blatant mishits, these 2 big flares out to the right. But if you look at my dispersion, the ones that I caught on the screws were actually super tight. So let's compare the previous clubs. The first was the King Tour, right? The most forgiving. Then into the CB, my dispersion wasn't as tight. But then the MB actually had some of the tightest balls. I had 6 maybe of the tightest dispersion when I caught it flush on the screws. But look at these mishits. So this is why I think a lot of pros like Ricky Fowler are moving away from an MB into something more forgiving. So for me, like personally in my game, I can't have this miss. So if you're someone that's always played MBs, I think these look really good, they sound good, and they feel good. There's not a lot wrong in the club. It's more the user. So for me, having this miss, I just can't have that. What I want to do now is take these clubs to a par 3. I mentioned that workability is key to me, so I want to see if I can move these balls how I want to. So let's go test those. So I have the King Tour. So based on my range session, based on distance and dispersion, this was the best club for me. Now that I'm on a par 3, I want to see if I can shot shape and maybe move it from right to left or maybe from left to right to get more of a realistic look on how these would play on the course. So let's just kind of play around. Okay, let's get 5 on the green here. Release. I like this one. There we go. Birdie look. Okay, I said I wanted to play around with the playability of these irons. So let's see if I can kind of rope one in there. Oh, there it goes. Whew. That turned, hey? So there's my big drastic draw. I don't think I'll be able to get a cut there, but at least you should be able to see, hopefully, the shape that I can still turn this. There we go. Like I said, it won't go as far. Might roll up there, but I can work it both ways. So I think that's what you're looking for in a player's iron that's as forgiving. So there you go. If that's your miss hit, you're just below the hole and you're chipping up, I would say that's a win for these irons. One more.
Try to hit a low one.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. I should just do that every time. Okay guys, in wrapping up, the player irons from Cobra all felt really good. And for me, the iron that I would choose is definitely that King Tour. I can see why Ricky moved to a more forgiving player's iron. Overall though, if you're in the market for a new set of player irons, I 100% recommend that you put the new Cobra lineup on your list. Thanks again for watching this video. I'll check in with you next time.